imagine that you're in a city and you're trying to get
Hmm.
somewhere. What do
Hmm.
you see in your mind's eye?
A combination of the place I want to go to, how it looks when you get there, and then if the mind is like a camera, so zooming out to see from above the map of where you're going. And I kind of assumed everyone did this, but Francis says not.
We are Imagine an Apple with your hosts, me, Vin, and Francis. Today,
Hello.
today we're going to be interviewing Anna, who has the ability to navigate cities by visualizing anything she wants. So it's sort of a pro-phantasic ability. Hello, Anna. Welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, thanks for having me.
So before we jump into how you visualize maps and your super city navigation skills, we have a few basic set of questions that we like to ask everyone. The first of which is like, can you imagine an apple?
I can imagine an apple.
What does
Yes,
it
I
look
would
like?
say it's red and shiny and it's round and it's definitely solid, but it's not that detailed, I wouldn't say. But it does
But you,
exist. It's there.
but you could make it as detailed as you wanted to.
Yeah, I could zoom in or zoom out, I think. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Now, recall a memory from your past and your experience of remembering it.
Okay. Should I do that out loud?
Yes, like
Okay.
just describe the visual details of it. If there's any images, audio, or emotions or concepts that you might have with it.
All right. I'm going to recall the memory of waiting for the school bus when I was a teenager. So I'm visualizing like the road and the cars going past, and it's cold, and I guess I'm a bit impatient, but also kind of happy to be outside. Um, yeah, yeah.
Very well. So, what about inner voices? Do you have an inner voice? What does it sound like?
Yeah, I do. It's talking to me most of the time. I also think a lot of the time I'm listening to a song in my head, so it's song lyrics. And I have noticed that if I ask other people, what song can you hear in your head right now? Very often people are listening to a song. So quite a lot of the time it's a song. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Does that include the instruments and things, or just the voice?
No, the lyrics and the tune.
Yeah,
So
in your
like,
own voice, but you singing it, sort of thing.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So like default mode is just a song is playing of some kind.
Just like background music. So, do you have background music right now going in your head?
No, because I'm talking to you. But
Right.
so I think it's like a verbal. If there's other verbal processing going on, there's no song. So sometimes my voice is talking, but then if that's not happening, there'll be a song playing.
What about when
And I
you're
think this is
reading?
quite common. Not if I'm reading though. So yeah, the verbal. There's like one verbal input anytime, which might be reading, or it might be talking to somebody, or it might be listening to the radio, or it's the voice talking.
Interesting, and that's most of the because I feel because that happens to me a few percent of the time. I have a song that gets in my head, but
Right,
not
right.
not all the
That you're
time, but sometimes.
consciously aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Mm.
yeah, I have noticed if you say to somebody what song is playing in your head, very often, if there's no like other speaking going on, they'll be listening to a song. Try it.
Okay.
Do you have that, Vin? Just out of interest.
I don't have a song going around in my head all the time. I usually like to have it like a bit more quiet. Although sometimes when a song does get stuck in my head, it's there for a while, but preferably I like to, have a quiet mind.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely an inner voice of some kind always.
Does this inner voice have like an accent?
Ooh, I think it has my accent.
Okay, your voice. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
yeah.
think it's my voice. I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it sounds like what's called an articulatory inner voice, which is using the speech systems of the brain rather than an audio one, which is using the audio parts of the brain.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
So that pretty much covers our next question as well, which is like, can you imagine music? Because your inner voice is basically just an earworm. Cool. Right. Well,
Yeah.
that's our basic questions done and dusted. Now let's get on to like some Anna specific capabilities that we're going to be like talking to you about. So imagine that you're in a city and you're trying to get
Mhm.
somewhere. What do
Mhm.
you see in your mind's eye?
Okay. Well, usually it would be a top-down view, like a map. Well, yeah, it would be a combination of the place I want to go to, like how it looks when you get there, and then like if the mind is like a camera, so zooming out to see from above the map of where you're going. And I kind of assumed everyone did this, but Francis says not. So yeah, combination of the place itself and then the bird's eye view from above. So I'm here, the place is there. Here's how I've got to get there.
Oh wow, that's so interesting. I've never done this before. So this is quite like a rare skill, and I'm like phantasic.
Mhm.
Do you? How much detail is there in your map?
Not a lot, to be fair.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, there's a dot where I am, there's the place, and then there's, I guess, like the main features of the town or the city.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and it's not necessarily north facing either, although sometimes it is, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, north. Yeah, it's not necessarily oriented north upright. But it's not. Not a. I mean, it probably looks like the kind of pencil map you would sketch if you were going to sketch the city. Did you see what I mean? Is that
Yeah,
sort of level of
so
detail?
it's very schematic,
Yeah,
bare bones detail. It's not like Google Maps if you were to like go into like a Google Street Mode or something.
yeah, that would be awesome. But no, it's not. It's more like it's more like what you would draw.
But- Okay, so that's like the map mode where you go into bird's eye view. You
Yeah,
also mentioned that you see the place that that you would be arriving at. So you see the point A and the point B. What is that like? And then how is that different from bird's eye view map mode?
yeah, okay. So I mean, I guess the first view is like being Google Street View. So you're there and you're like, okay, I'm in the place I'm going to go to. I'm looking around, visualizing it, and then the second mode is map mode. So I guess maybe it's like recalling the place. Oh yeah, that place.
And it sounded like you swapped between them smoothly, like a camera came out and went into the air or something. Or
Yeah, exactly.
can you describe that more? Or?
um, well, I don't know if it is smooth. It feels smooth. It's not. It's not like a sort of pan view upward like a camera would, but it's it just sort of instantly. There's definitely a
Yeah.
sense of something spatial happening. I think, like, yeah,
Right, of the transformation and rotation
yeah,
needed to get from one
yeah,
to the other.
exactly, yeah, yeah. So it's almost like, I'm experiencing being here. I'm experiencing being there. Visually, how the place looks, and then a spatial orientation happens between me being here and the space being there, and yeah, if that makes sense, a rotation.
Right, so in specifically, it means you know from what you can see where you are now, you know what the rotation is to the map, so you know like which way to go, almost, or
Possibly, yeah. I don't think it's anything sort of, yeah. I think it's spatial rather than visual. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to ask
Yeah,
you more about actually.
yeah.
So, so when you experience your whereabouts, is it experienced like like a sixth sense, like you just know where you are, or are you seeing it visually in your mind's eye? So you're using, a visual
Mm.
stimuli, like you're conjuring visual imagery in your mind's eye, and then using that to navigate. Or maybe it's a bit of
Yeah,
both.
that's quite a fine distinction, isn't it? I think it's spatial rather than visual. I think it's a spatial thing that then becomes a 2D map, if you see what I mean.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think it's primarily spatial, but then perhaps expressed in the same way that maps are spatial. But
so does it have a color or texture, or like can you tell are there labels in writing in a particular font or anything like that specific?
no, I think it's like a grey and white pencil sketch on a white piece of paper. But yeah, it's not. It's not. Yeah, there aren't sort of visual details or font labels or anything like that. Yeah, it's
Is
like you would draw it.
is there like a specific feature of the map that is more salient than others? So, for example, are the roads the thing that you pay attention to the most, or do you imagine yourself between point A and point B and taking like the shortest? distance between there, regardless of whether there's a road or not.
Yes, there are salient features, and I think those salient features are the things, perhaps the waypoints that you would, if you were traveling, you would notice as you were traveling. So yeah, the roads or the sort of major stations if it's a city, or yeah, the things by which you would know your progress and navigate, if you see what I mean. So they're not the most visually striking things necessarily.
Landmarks.
Yeah, exactly.
So the
Right.
landmarks will be labelled on the map in some way, or
They wouldn't be not labelled verbally, but I would know what they were, if you see what I mean. There might only be like 4 or 5 of them, 2 or 3 of them even.
so you've just got a sense of where they are rather than they're visually on the map.
No, they're visually on the map, but they're not they're not labelled with text, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, but
they're
they have
labelled
like a cross or a picture.
Yeah, a little picture or a schematic. If it's a tube stop, then a circle or
Oh, so the tube stop will be a circle with a line through it, kind of, or something.
yeah, or just a circle. Yeah. So like I'm thinking that I'm at my house and I'm thinking about going downtown. I think I can kind of what I immediately do is picture the shop I want to go to, say, and then zoom out. Okay, these are the roads. These are the 3 or 4 roads that I would cross to get there, and I can visually see the road junction as a sort of schematic diagram, and then the road junction where I'm going to as a grey pencil map.
So these kinds of navigation, is this specific to London? Is it like, do you imagine this for all cities, or are you particularly good at London and it's harder to like transpose this to new places that you've never been to before?
I think the level of detail would be much higher in London, and London would definitely be north facing as well. Whereas I think if it was a new place, I think I would still do it, but it wouldn't necessarily be north facing. It would be sort of oriented to however the direction really was in my head, if that makes sense. Because I wouldn't necessarily know how it was on the map, but I have a spatial sense of it.
So it just happens
So
automatically, like wherever you
I
are.
think so. Yeah. There was a fascinating experiment someone did where they asked people to draw. You've probably seen it. It was in London where they stopped people on the street and asked them to draw a map of where they were. I think it was Hackney Road. And the different maps that people produced was so interesting. The different level of detail on the map, how the maps were drawn, what people chose to feature. It was extraordinary. I really recommend looking that up.
Oh, I'd love to find that. I might ask you if I can't find it, if you can.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, but I think everybody has that to some extent. Well, maybe they don't. Maybe that's something you'll find out. But if you're walking around the city, I think everyone has that to some extent, a sort of little spatial map of where they are, where they're going. So it's just that, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost aphantasic. I'm very hyperphantasic, but I do have a spatial awareness of the very important roads and how they lay out to each other. And they're only angled from my perspective, not from above, but like that road's over there and that road's over there, kind of thing. So,
okay.
One of the stages you described sounded very familiar. And it's really spatial. There's literally no color. It's not even grey on white. It's just colorless completely.
Right. But it's visual.
Well, I didn't think it was, but Aphantasia Meow, when I did a coaching session with him about getting better at imagination, he was like, yeah, this spatial stuff is a component of visual imagery, which makes sense because visual imagery is located at spatial locations. Visual is basically color and texture at a spatial location. So he was like, it's part of the same part of the brain as the visual part, even though you're not doing the color and the texture. Apparently, but I don't know how I've not seen any good science on this, so I don't know how true, what the detail is.
Interesting.
You mentioned the dot where you are.
Yeah.
I thought you said to me before it was an arrow, but I'm not sure. Is it always a dot? What's it? What does the dot look like, and what colour is that?
I guess on the map it's a little grey dot, and then the destination little grey dot. Yeah. I'm just thinking. Actually, I think the visual element is the grey pencil map, and then every kind of waypoint that was highlighted is on the map, and for each of those there's scenes that I can jump into and then be in and then visualize. So the road junction, I can then visualize the road junction and how that's laid out and what the texture of the brick is like on the building. And then the next waypoint, I can again go down and I'm seeing that in my mind, the shop fronts and so on. So perhaps they are particularly strong visual memories, or perhaps they're things that are spatially salient that one remembers because they're spatially salient. I don't know, but those are.
Yeah, it's really interesting you do both those things, because I've talked to people who only do the visualization of waypoints. So they just go, what if I go down this junction, what will I see when I get there? And then imagine being down the junction, and then imagine being down the next one and the next one, but they don't have a map.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to other people who only have a map and don't imagine the street views, but you're using both, which is probably super powerful.
Yeah, no, I primarily rely on like landmarks and then just like go according to like directions there. But you seem to have like that plus like the bird's eye view map. Do you see that simultaneously, or is one happening at like a specific time followed by the other?
No, it's one followed by the other. But
okay.
I guess it's, you see the overall map, you have a sort of sense of the overall map. Perhaps you can hold in your mind 5 or 6 features of the overall map, start dot, end dot, 5 or 6 waypoints, 3 or 4 waypoints, and then seamlessly, without any sort of jumps, for each of those waypoints. So, oh yes, that's that junction. That's what that looks like. That's that junction. That's what that looks like. If that makes sense.
But when you're seeing the junction, you don't see the map at the other point. But you can quickly like switch the other one.
But yeah, perhaps it's, I don't see it, but I still have a sense of where I am within it, if that makes sense. I don't see it. I don't see one thing at once.
The number of features. So you said 5 or 6 features. It's like that's the route find. You've already done the route finding and you know what the route you're taking is. But before that, if there's a really complicated road network with hundreds of roads, do you see all of them and like choose which one you're going to go down? How does that work?
Oh, wow. I don't know. No, I think, I've already done the route finding, I think. And there's a sort of sense of these are the key points. And then there's sort of some complexity. There are sort of lots of roads here, but I don't have to worry about them. So on the map, there's some squiggles.
Right. But you do all this in your head, like you're not looking at Google Maps and while you decide which waypoints you're going to use for this journey.
I mean, I guess this is somewhere like I already know how to get to.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I'm not somebody who can like, visualize the whole of Google Maps and pick the best route. No.
Right, so you're not, you can't trace the route on the complete detailed map with all the roads on it. It's more like you just get aware of which the waypoints are for this journey. Or
well, I'm thinking like if I'm at Paddington and say I want to go to like, somewhere, London Bridge or something. Like, it's not like I'm looking at Google Maps and I can kind of go, oh, here's 5 or 6 routes I could take. Let's pick the best one. It's like, oh yeah, I know Paddington's here. I know London Bridge down here. Like, there are sort of 3 or 4 different routes I could take. I think I'll take this one. And then I kind of go, oh yeah, go across, go down, go left,
Okay, yeah, that's already miles better than what I could manage. I would be like, I have this one route, and if I miss it, then I'm gonna have to like rely on Google Maps or something like that. Yeah, that's really fascinating. How do you use Google Maps? If you
use Google Maps. Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. So I wonder if people different how they do that. I would want to put in destination, see the route, look at the sort of top-down view, and then pick the best route that seems best to me. And and again, optimize for waypoints I know. So I know Oxford Circus. I'll go that way.
so you might pick a route that you'll be able to remember, kind of.
Yeah, for familiarity. But I think probably many people do that. I mean, it depends. If I'm in a rush, I'll just pick the fastest one. But it's kind of nice to go places you are familiar with. Yeah, because I'll get to the interchange and I'll know where to go. That's easy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely pick conceptually simple routes and go, oh, I'm going to pick that route because I just stay on one road for longer and I don't have to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's slightly different. That's because I'm remembering it conceptually, like go down here and turn left, which is really ineffective.
But you're making me wonder about wayfinding and different ways people do it. I mean, we naturally, when we give directions to somebody, I think, we sort of think of the major waypoints, and we describe them visually to people generally, right? So that seems like an intuitive way of doing it. The decision points. It seems intuitive you'd remember the decision points and have a sort of visual concept of those. Yeah, and I don't know. I guess maybe the spatial element is slightly different, and maybe learn from using maps. I don't know.
I was wondering, like, what sorts of waypoints are like typical waypoints for you? What like exemplifies a waypoint? I'm trying to imagine.
A decision point where you could go down several different routes, I guess,
Right.
or something. Possibly something that's like visually salient, like
Okay.
there's a big statue there or something.
So
But
I
no,
would
more likely a decision point,
right.
or a major route interchange. Sorry.
Because when someone says like waypoint, I immediately go to like, okay, that means landmark, and so I'll
Right.
probably like base my decision on where to like turn left or right based off that big landmark. But obviously for you, it's not something as like salient as like a landmark. It's probably something more, as you said, like a decision point. What does that look
Yeah,
like?
a kind of a routing point, I guess. So yeah, where the roads cross or where the railway lines cross. Or,
Okay.
So yeah, probably something that's salient on the map, actually. Yeah, the thing the map would show you. Yeah, so yeah, like imagining here to this town, I go, yeah, I'm going to cross the road at the bottom. That looks like this on the map with the roads crossing. You can visually see what that looks like. Then it's a blank to the end of the next road. There's a sort of indeterminate line length on the map. Doesn't really matter. And then visualize the bottom of the road again. And yeah, if you ask me what was between those 2 points, there's nothing. I can make an effort and see it, but there's nothing that comes up automatically.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So it's
Great.
like, yeah, the brain's filtering the effect. The brain's filtering for the sort of most important bits and remembering the most important bits, I guess.
Is there a route that you can imagine perfectly from the start till the end, and everything that comes in sequence?
I feel like there are, but I'm sure if I did it, I would find many things that I hadn't remembered.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah. No. So I'm gonna say no because it would be very much edited highlights, I think. Yeah, and again, yeah, if I tried to draw it on a map, I think I would quickly find that I'd forgotten many of the most important bits. Yeah. I do find that, like, wherever I am, this is one question I'd like to know the answer to, actually, is, like, how often do people know where north is? Because some people just always know where north is, and some people don't. And I think that must be something about about people's kind of I don't know the word proprioception, but whatever, experience of being in the world must be more or less spatial, depending on that.
Do you always know? Yeah.
No, but if I realise that I don't, I get nervous and try and work it out.
Okay.
So I think I do most of the time, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't know in every situation. But if I did, then I would sort of freak me out a bit. But some people always know. I think some people, they're just always aware of it. And I think that some people must have the top-down map in their head all the time. Perhaps, I don't know.
There's definitely like some anthropological, ethnographic like records about some tribes who, instead of having indexical directions, so left or right, they have like north and south. And so for them, they have the extra added benefit of like the language forcing them to think in that way and communicate as well in that way. Like, here's north side and here's south side, instead of like, here's it's on your left or it's on your right.
Okay, that's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that kind of like reinforces what might be like a natural compass that some people have all the time, and maybe it makes it easier for them to access that direction.
Yes, and then I wonder if they're internal. I wonder how that affects their internal perception of where they are and where things are. Whether that's then more, that's then I don't know how to describe it. More spatial. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely much more comfortable if I know where north is as well. And quite often that's the first thing I'll find out if I don't know anything else.
Okay.
Because even if I know literally nothing else, but I know which way north is, I can vaguely try to get somewhere by vaguely walking in the right direction, even without knowing any of the
Oh,
streets.
that's fascinating.
And that goes horribly wrong. I remember it. Yeah,
Right.
I remember when I was first in Cambridge, it going horribly wrong, and there was this road that curved, and I hadn't realised, and I just ended up out in the West Cambridge rather than North Cambridge.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely makes me feel safer. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, like, I have no idea where north is most of the time, and I just like, I mean, I'll be able to infer it from the direction of the sun, but most of the time I don't know where north is, and it doesn't really bother me because I don't know. I just probably use other ways of navigating. So it's fascinating just like to see how some
It must be
people.
correlated with having a spatial map, because any kind of spatial map, whether it's above you or view angled where you are, you sort of need to know where north is for it to be useful. Whereas the
fair enough.
landmark map, you're looking for the landmark, so it's more like you need to know at each junction which way to go, which is slightly different, right?
I think you can have spatial maps if you don't know where north is, but you can have very simple ones, I think.
Yeah.
So you can have a sense of I'm here and the thing's over there and the other thing's over there.
Yeah.
But it's very limited, I think, what you can do with that. So yeah, if you're new to a place, I think you can do that quite, but then you can't store that in any great detail.
Right. Yeah, like you can have a temporary. I can have a temporary map when I just got off a train and I know that I need to be left of the train line or something, and I don't know which way north is. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. But I also find that if I'm walking around town, I get lost. Then I'm immediately very uncomfortable. I know I'm lost quite quickly and get very uncomfortable.
Oh, you don't find it fun?
No, and some people I think don't ever get lost. And some people are very comfortable being lost.
Yeah,
but I think that must also relate to the kind of the sense of, because I immediately kind of go, oh God, my map's gone, I don't know where I am. And presumably some people never ever lose themselves on the map. I don't know. Some people don't mind losing themselves on the map or don't have a map in the first place.
What's it feel like being lost? Does it feel in your body somewhere, or is it cognitive?
Well, yeah, it feels like it feels a bit like not being able to see anything. Because, yeah, like if you shut your eyes and you can't see anything, you don't know where anything else is, and so that's quite scary. It feels a bit like that because suddenly you've lost the sense of the map and where you are, and then that's quite scary. So it feels a little bit like that. So, yeah, you don't quite know where the boundaries of yourself are and where the boundaries of everything else is. That feels a bit alarming, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Mm.
Do you find that, Francis?
No. Not really.
You like being lost?
I mean, I have to, because I'm lost a lot of the time.
Yeah, I'm basically indifferent.
I'll either definitely need to practically get somewhere and then immediately try and get unlost, or I'll just enjoy being lost for a bit and be like, look at everything I can see in this place I've never been to before.
How do you get unlost if you're lost?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that as well. I mean, if I don't care much because I don't have a deadline, then I just keep wandering around till I find somewhere that I'm not lost anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, now these days I just look at a map, but that's
yeah.
Before maps, I would ask people directions.
Mm-hmm.
I would interrupt people all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how would you know if you were unlost? You would see something you knew.
Yeah, I would either recognize a junction where I am, because I can't, see a place and know I'm in a place, or know, even if I don't know where I am, know what route I'm going to take, I guess, by whatever means I'm using for route finding.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a bit weird, the concept of being lost when you have a GPS on you all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
What do you do when you get that fear? Do you just like immediately look at your phone and look at Google Maps, or?
Yeah, these days I would. I guess, in the olden days I would, ask somebody, or attempt to sort of spatially orientate by going, I know that chimney must be in the north. I recognise that chimney, so it's over there. Or just kind of wander until I could then reorientate in relation to the map. But yeah, it's not a feeling I enjoy at all. And it does feel like some kind of sense has been switched off at that point.
Interesting, yeah.
And what do you do, Vynn?
Oh, I don't give I don't care. The fastest way for me to like get unlost is to retrace my steps, and that's if I want to get unlost, and I just generally don't have the anxiety that you have, Anna. So I
Mhm,
mainly
mhm.
just wander about, hoping that I'll find something, some cute little cafe that I can stumble upon. So yeah, not quite
That
as
sounds
big of
nice.
a
Yeah,
not
that
quite as
sounds nice.
a concern for me as it is for you.
Mhm.
So I've got a non-mapping question on a completely different topic I want to ask. But before I do, is there anything else anyone wants to talk about to do with navigation before I switch
No,
topics?
just to say that, yeah, I'd always assumed that everyone else was exactly like me, and this is not the case. And this
Well,
kind of blowing my mind that people are so different. That's all.
yeah, I
I
know.
don't think it's completely rare. I would like to do a survey and find the percentages. I think there are a lot of
No, I don't
people
think
who
it's
see a
rare.
map,
Yeah,
and there are a lot of
yeah,
people who
yeah,
see
yeah.
landmarks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many people do both.
Everybody must do both to an extent, no, but
Mm.
perhaps, yeah.
I'm inclined to think that the
Um,
landmarks is an easier thing to do than the maps, because simply because I do the landmark thing and have no map.
Yeah,
But I could be wrong,
yeah,
of course.
yeah.
and
I don't think it's easier. I think, yeah, I think everybody must do both to an extent, but perhaps it's just as you say, like different senses
so,
develop
so
differently in people.
so also there's always people who are really good at that. Like, are you quite good, well known for being good at navigating or not? Anna? Do people tend to think you won't get lost or you arrive at
Not
time at
especially,
places or
not especially, no. And like I've certainly met people who are far better than me at navigating.
right? So they
Yeah.
presumably have an even
Um,
better visual imagery of the map, right?
I don't know. I've never talked to them about it. Yeah. Maybe I'd love to, if you did an interview with a super navigator, I'd love to hear
Yeah.
that. I was just going to say, I assume, my assumption would be that they have a super detailed map with just more features on it and a stronger sense of where they are within it. But
Mm,
perhaps that's completely wrong. I don't know.
mm.
Yeah, I'd love to
And
find out.
and there have definitely always been people, some percentage of people who just get lost all the time and always arrive late at everything and don't know how to get anywhere and just go, I can't find my way. I always get,
Yeah.
and it was always just said, oh, I can't find my way. I just get lost. I get lost. And I've talked to at least one person like that who was like, got a really good imagination in every other way, like has really good memories,
Mm,
but had
mm.
never thought of remembering landmarks or maps. Just hadn't done either of those things.
Yeah.
Just hadn't learned that skill, and so got lost all the time. So it's not even just about image. It's not just, and I've got no imagination apart from I've got a little bit of, like, I have a little bit of spatial maps, even though I don't really have an imagination. So it's like, I think it's quite diverse,
Mm.
the parameters. But and I don't think anyone's particularly rare. I don't think, yeah, there might be some really far out cases, but I'm sure, yeah, 30% of people like do what you do or something, or 20% of people. It's not like
Yeah,
1%.
yeah, 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 yeah. I wonder. I mean, to some extent, it must also be about learning to use maps. There's a great story in a book by Peter Hessler, who was I think the New York Times' China correspondent, about driving through rural China and getting lost and using maps. And he eventually learned that he couldn't ask people directions using maps because first he would have to explain to people what the map was, and how maps worked, which would take ages. And then when he'd done that, people get so excited about seeing the map that it'd be impossible to to get away within an hour or two because people would be like so fascinated by the map and want to spend time looking at it. So to some extent, presumably the concept of map reading itself is.
Which decade was that in?
I think the 1980s, maybe the 70s. But yeah, sort of rural pre-industrialized China.
Yeah, because by 2000, yeah, early
Mm.
2000s, there were maps available of every bit of China everywhere, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know
yeah,
anything
no,
else.
that's good. So the completely different question:
Mm.
you are also good at computer programming, and yeah, have worked professionally as it. Do you? And I've got a question: can you remember when you're programming? Does anything
Mm.
appear in your mind's eye ever while you're programming? And if so, what?
Oh wow. Yeah, I think there's usually a. This is very hard to describe. I'd like to hear your answer. This is very hard to describe. There's usually some kind of spatial structure.
Mm.
So I haven't programmed for a while, but I mean, you're usually sort of trying to hold 3 or 4 or 5 different things in your head, aren't you? And those, I think, are loosely arranged in some kind of spatial structure. But I think the things themselves are not necessarily visually detailed objects, which makes sense, right? Because they're abstract things. But they are loose grey shapes that interface in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense in 3D either. Does that make sense?
Not quite.
No, okay, sorry.
So you've got some concepts that aren't visual, but they're anchored in space, in a visual space.
Yeah, they're definitely, yeah. They are. I mean, they are objects. They're just maybe they're sort of grey, smoky, vague objects. And they have, I suppose what I mean is they have spatial interrelations. So perhaps you've got a thing and it's locking into another thing and it's on top of another thing. And that is sort of spatially coherent and you could walk around it. But then the thing on top sits in relation to something else, like is connected to it. And that relationship is also spatially coherent. But if you put the two together, they would not actually fit in the same 3D space consistently, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And
yeah.
So this you're describing, is that like a specific piece of software you're working on? You'll have a consistent like set of images for that piece of software, or is it to do with what your current task is?
Oh, it's whatever the current task is, yeah. So it's not, it's not, I guess it's like, finish this function, make this bit better. There's a hack here, optimize this bit. And all of these tasks are like little shapes that fit together. And they're like loose, grey, smoky objects. The shape is determined by whatever the task is, in some sense. And it's a stack of things you've got to do. And you're like going, okay, look over here. That one can wait. But I couldn't possibly draw it because it wouldn't make any sense.
And is there a dependency, like something you have to do before something else has a particular spatial relationship?
Yes. So the things are linked so they fit together or slot together.
So what's that, like the thing below? You have to do the thing above, or?
I don't think it's quite that neat, but yeah, something like that. It's like I know what the tasks are and I know where they are. I know how they fit together. And then I suppose if the tasks themselves have any kind of mathematical or spatial or I guess even sort of, I don't know, ordinal aspects, that might well be reflected spatially in the sort of swirling diagram of stuff. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely spatial. So let's, you're calling a function, that function's calling another function, and you've got a utility class over here. Like those things are objects and they fit together, and I can see how they fit together in my mind. And I can go, this bit's like, more important now, I'll go over here, work on that. But I'm still visually, I'm like, spatially, I'm working over here, but those things are still over there behind me and I mustn't forget about them. And I can go back over here.
And you hold those in your mind's eye, like what? So you can go off and go immersed into one bit of this and then come back out again and you'll remember the object's still there to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. Almost like, you're fitting a kitchen or something,
So I have to write a to-do list. Like I write a very local to-do list for that exact same purpose, but I would have to write it down to make sure I definitely remember it. Whereas it sounds like you don't need to do that because you can sort of see it.
No, I do that too. And it helps solidify it. But
yeah,
it's not.
But yeah, that thing is still there. It's still there. And that's why being interrupted is such pain, right? Because that whole spatial structure then sort of falls apart.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Ah.
Oh, so the idea of being in the zone, you kind of your spatial structure collapses if you leave the zone of coding effective, like really hyper effectively.
And I assume that's the same for everybody. I mean, I have seen.
Nope.
No, okay. But then I think it's true for most people that if they're interrupted, it's a problem. So then there must be something else that's going on that's got that local stack. But how is that local stack stored? If not, how is it stored?
Yeah, because I don't see a visual version of the local stack, but I'm sure I still have it. I have some of the lower level stuff going on still. It must be, right? Because I'm... Yeah. Okay. And that sounded like lots of that. Does that work for other projects as well? So I don't know, like you're moving house at the moment. Do you have like in your
Oh
head
God, no.
loads
No.
of visualizations of that project? Because that's a complicated project, similarly to a software project.
Yeah, that's many kind of unrelated tasks, so perhaps they're not quite as spatially related to each other.
Okay.
I mean, perhaps, like if you're getting quotes for insurance, there's a sense of there's a space and it's the insurance space, and then you've got this quote and this quote and this quote and this quote, and this one's, not good, so it's like grey or whatever. Yeah, so perhaps within each individual task there are spatial elements to it. And if you're thinking about, you've got 4 quotes, yes, there's a kind of sense of those 4 and how they might rank perhaps, or how you feel about each one, and you can sort of... So yeah, perhaps any local task that involves having things in your head does that make sense?
Okay.
Visual spatial. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
think it
kind of,
varies
yeah.
hugely between people what they do with this. So I haven't asked enough people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. Yeah. I did once read a description of this. This is what got me into the whole topic, was a description of the process of thinking by somebody who described it as having these smoky grey shapes that you could sort of move around.
Oh.
And I was like, yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you know where that was, or?
Oh, it was years ago. I'll try and dig it out. It was a philosopher of some kind. I'll try
That'd
and
be
dig
great.
it out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I definitely feel like the right conversations and research into this can lead to like very practical tips and people learning to use it.
Yeah.
Because someone might just have not thought of doing that. So I mean, I haven't. I would love to ask lots of programmers the same question. I got at least one. Yeah, someone I worked with. She was like, "Oh yeah," she was very visual and was a front end developer, and she was like, "Yeah, I see the code examples like as text floating visually in her mind's eye." So if she's trying to remember the syntax of an if statement, she like sees an example if statement and then copies it out. Whereas I have to just literally, if I can't just remember it by muscle memory, I have to kind of Google it or reason what it is or something. I don't see it.
Interesting.
Floating as text. Yeah. So I think there's a lot going on there.
That sounds, that's very mysterious. That's very mysterious. Because in a way, the visual elements are very easy to describe, whereas what's going on for you is less easy to describe. But it's very much an experience that you have.
Oh, right, yes. So I'm doing lots of unsymbolized conceptual thinking, yes. Hurlburt's categorization, and that's I can't really say anything more about it.
Right, okay. But it's an experience that you are having, and when you're having it, and it's the same each time. But it's,
And I think it's similar to yours in a sense, because I don't see it when it's got a spatial, but the stuff you're saying about how things interlock, like when I'm saying the concepts, the concepts all interlock in this complicated way that I just don't think is spatial at all, and I wouldn't want to represent spatially, and it's too complicated to be spatial, but I'm aware of that complexity and how the things interrelate and what the dependencies are.
Yeah.
The other answer I've got is people see diagrams. So, like, literally the diagrams that you put in design documents and things. So, like a diagram that shows the subsystems, or they'll see a diagram of the requests and responses between systems.
Right. And
might actually literally bring that up while coding in their head.
That sounds convenient.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
And this leads to lots of the stuff practically in a team. When you're writing a document, some people prefer verbal documents. I prefer a verbal document because it has all, like, any level of richness of the concepts get contained verbally in it, and then my brain makes the conceptual map. Whereas other people want to see a diagram because then they can just quickly recall the diagram, and it's much more practical. So they're getting lots of information very rapidly from the visual diagram. Whereas I don't really find the visual diagram very useful at all. I have to sort of study it and convert each part of the diagram to a concept. It's really hard work. So there's the difference in how we're doing practical tasks. This is not just about programming, I don't think. I think it's about every practical task which people work together on. And the difference in how we're doing imagery or sound or conceptual thinking in our minds while we're doing it alters what we expect in our communications with other people we're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And that can often create friction or effective or ineffective team working, I suspect.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I think, yes, it's partly why this topic fascinates me is I think it affects how you relate to the world and also how you expect to relate to other people. If you know more about how other people are conceptualizing things, it can massively improve, both working relationships and other relationships too. So, I mean, sometimes I'm with somebody and I have a sense that we are both looking out together at a map of the world in some way, if that makes sense. And there's a sort of shared perspective of, okay, we're here looking out the world. The world is this big thing in front of us, and we're sort of looking at bits of it together. And I've never asked anyone, because maybe it'd be a weird question to ask people, but I've never asked anyone, is that what's going on for you? And and then sometimes I think, oh no, the person was doing something completely different, but I don't quite know what they are doing. So I think it's part of the reason this fascinates me is just, I think if you can articulate that and talk about it together, then it makes communication much easier sometimes, not just in teams, but in other relationships too.
Cool.
Right. What else should we talk about? Just to wrap up in the last few minutes.
Should we ask about faces really quickly before we go?
Yeah, go for it.
Anna, do you remember people's faces or their names more?
Definitely names.
Oh!
Yeah.
I was not expecting that.
I mean, this is a completely different thing between people, right? I can remember people's faces, but I'm less good at it than most people. And names are definitely easier. And it's quite embarrassing.
That's so interesting. Because you have this super visualizing power when it comes to maps and what have you. And I don't. And when it comes to remembering faces and names, typically people remember their faces better than they remember names.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, I've sort of deteriorated in my ability to remember faces, but my name my name recall has greatly been enhanced, and it's probably because
interesting.
I'm more word based these days. So I would imagine okay, if someone who's more visual based in their cognition, you would be instantly, face recognition comes easy, but names not quite as much. So for you to say otherwise is what's going on? It's not in my mind. It's hey, but she's a visual learner, is she not?
Interesting. I think a lot of my visual recognition is actually spatial. And I think visual details not so hot at, actually.
Right. Yeah.
My father is a member of the 1946 NHS birth cohort. So when he was born, he was part of the NHS's first babies, and he was in a cohort study with all the other babies born that week. And they had their 70th anniversary party. So all the babies got invited and they were all 70 years old. And I went with him. So it was 1,500 people who were all exactly the same age and who were basically all white. And as I was walking around, I was like, it is impossible to tell these people apart. And I'm actually struggling to recognize my own father because everybody here looks so similar. They're so demographically similar, the same age. And it made me realize how much we rely and I rely on just external cues of age, Yeah. It was very difficult to tell people apart.
So when you remember something, if you remember a scene, even the school bus scene, can you remember faces when you remember a scene, or are the faces quite low quality or blurry?
I wouldn't probably put faces in spontaneously. I guess if I was with somebody, I would, but it wouldn't be particularly high quality. It'd be blurry, I would say.
And when you remember a name, can you describe cognitively how you remember it?
Yeah, I see the text. That's easy.
Okay. Yeah.
You see the text.
Yeah, so if I like think Francis, I see Francis, the word in front of me.
Can you say what color or font it's in, or is it
It's in
not
Times New Roman.
Actually,
No, it's definitely it's serif. Yeah, I think it's Times New Roman.
Oh.
And what color is it?
It's black. It's probably just very dark grey actually.
Okay.
I'm not a massive fan nerd, I should say.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
but it sounds like there's some. I'm asking those questions to see exactly how much visual processing, because you can.
Right. Yeah.
People can say they see a word, but sometimes they're just. It's very subtle.
Right.
But
Yeah. No, I can see the serifs on the F, Francis. Yeah.
So when someone says their name, you make sure they spell it so that you can do this.
Right.
No,
right.
I guess I just translate it into how I think it's spelled.
Oh, interesting.
I don't consciously do it.
So I actually do. I don't see names as writing, but I remember names verbally.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely ask for the spelling because I'm not remembering them as audio. So I think some people remember names as audio. So they would phonetically remember it rather than remember the characters.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Is that you, Vynn?
That's me. I remember it phonetically because sometimes the spelling kind of confuses me because of like phonetic differences. I might sometimes visualize a word, but not according to how they would like spell it. And it's completely like my own like IPA or like my own phoneticization of their name. But I don't rely on like a visual spelling of their name. But I try to like just remember it audially.
And by audibly, does it come to your mind? Like, do you say it in your head as the way it comes to your mind?
Yeah.
In your own voice, or you hear them saying it when you first met them, or?
I think either one, but I have a preference for saying it in my voice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. If I were to like visualize it as like type, mine would be sans serif, something block, and it'd be very like a bright white font. Yeah.
White font. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Against a dark black background of nothing.
Or just whatever I'm looking at.
Just floating.
Yeah, floating that.
That sounds quite chic. Yeah. Cool. Well, this has been interesting.
I know, right?
Thank you so much, Anna. We've got a bunch of things to link to in the show notes. So the video of people drawing a map in Hackney, the Peter Hessler book about being able to explain maps. Ideally, the philosopher who talks about smoky grey shapes, which sounds really good. So we'll try and get those.
This is definitely like one of the more like surprising interviews I've done, because I was not expecting you to have so many like different ways of interacting with the world.
It's great. Thank you very much.
Very nice to meet you, Vynn.
If you enjoyed Imagine an Apple, please share it with your friends and vote on it on your podcast app. And do get in touch if you've got any feedback or ideas or topics you'd like us to cover.